Welcome to the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Slowick. Dan, you got an interesting can there. What are you sipping on to start us off?
Fest beer, man. Oktoberfest has started. And it's one of my favorite seasons that breweries go through because I really enjoy the German beers. I am drinking a fest beer from Goal. It's an acronym for Get Out and Live. It's a new brewery in San Diego that just opened through the incubator that also has breweries like Barley and Sword that we've had on the show prior. And some major ones that went on to success, like Juneshine, has started in this incubator as well, the big hard kombucha company. But Get Out and Live is actually a parent brand. The brewery is just like one arm of it. And I was just reading a little bit about it, and they're trying to do a variety of things. And I know they did game fishing, so like just professional fishermen. They have their brand is a part of that, so it seems like a lifestyle brand. A brewery is part of it, but people are really excited about this brewery in San Diego because of the head brewer, and it's basically his brainchild, Derek Gallinosa. He's been a brewer up at Moksa, Moksa, up in Rockland, California, and that just like blew up because of some of the beers that he did there. He's been at Karl Strauss as well. So Abnormal Beer Company as well. So wherever this guy goes, he's got a ton of awards here. He's been gold medalist. He's got over like 10 gold medals to his resume for like Great American Beer Festival, California beer competitions as well. And just talking to our friend Gavin, who works over at Phase 3 in Illinois, he knew Goal through like Beer Shares, the community, because they do meads, because he is a fermenter as well. So he's got that under his belt as well. So they do a lot of really cool looking things. The cans, like they're really kind of looking like almost like a luxury style for a beer. I like their style, I like the way they look. The beer is really good as well. Got a 3.98 on Untappd. It's just simply called their Fest beer. It's a 5.2 alcohol. It's really good. I have no doubt this place will be around for a while. What about you? What are you drinking?
Nice. Awesome. I actually have an Oktoberfest as well. It's that season, isn't it? So I got Metropolitan
Tis the
Brewing.
season.
They're based out of Chicago. They were actually founded in 2008 by former husband and wife, Doug Hurst and Tracy Hurst. Doug got his brewing diploma at the Siebel Institute of Technology. We've talked about that place a lot. A lot of great brewers have come from there. And he actually went to the World Brewing Academy as well. This brewery was originally located in a converted warehouse in industrial area of Ravenswood. And then in 2017, they moved to a larger facility with the tap room on Rockwell Street. That's right on the river there. It's got the boats you can rent and just take down the river, up and down the river for a little while. They got a little barbecue place in there now too that you can get some food while you're drinking at Metropolitan. But a little bit different than Goal. Metropolitan strictly focuses on lagers. So they're the sole craft brewery in Chicago that produces only lagers. And so what I have here is the Oktoberfest lager. It's 6.1%. It gets a 3.68 on Untappd. It's got that toasty, malty flavor, dry lager finish. It's great. I mean, Oktoberfest just typically rolls around right at that the time the playoff race is heating up in the
Always.
MLB. So,
That's right.
we had to bring on a Cubs guest here. Our next guest, Greg Zumach. He's the co-founder and writer at Northsidebound.com and the co-host of Cubs on Deck. You can find him on Twitter at Ivy Futures. Greg, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm thrilled to be here. You're both drinking Oktoberfest. I don't have one open, but I'm the guy that unfortunately has to be gluten free, and I have 4 pumpkin beers from Holidayly, which is a place local to Colorado. It's a gluten free one. Beers are actually really good.
Oh, nice.
I save those only for October. I've got you can drink pumpkin beer all October, but it's got to be October. I've got like an internal rule. So I'm waiting for it. But that's coming up here in just a couple weeks. It's time.
Nice.
It's time for MLB playoffs, and it's time for pumpkin beers. So I'm ready to go.
Came quick.
It's a good time. Check out Dougfoot Brewing in San Diego. They're gluten free as well. I think the owner's wife had celiac, so he like made sure all of his beers were gluten free. But all right, let's get into the Cubs. I looked you up a little bit. Pharmacy professor turned with a passion for scouting Cubs farm system. I don't think that's a likely combination for many people. How did you get into scouting the Cubs farm system, or at least focusing on it?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always loved like prospects and the draft, which are somewhat, if you're going to look at baseball fans, I would say that prospects looking at minor leagues is a little bit more nichey, a little bit more widespread, kind of in the middle. The draft is like super nichey. You got a few people that are draft fanatics, but not a ton. And I've just always loved that. Maybe it's like
Mm.
the Cub fan in me, the internal optimist. I'm not sure. But man, it's just a ton of fun to watch it. I love bringing my kids to minor league baseball games. We were basically, the pandemic hit. There was no baseball to talk about. And so I just jumped online and was like, I've thought about all these things. And with
Mm.
this limited kind of time frame of games that year, I was just like, I'm just gonna start writing about it. And people online can tell me I'm a moron, and some maybe do. But it's just a lot of fun. I just threw some stuff out there and kind of nailed a few projections, learned a lot on the way. Had some that I totally kind of flopped on because that's just how it is,
Right.
and just made a lot of friends and just kind of kept collaborating. And a few Cubs Twitter folks and prospect folks, Todd Johnson, Jimmy Nelligan, and Greg Huss and I all kind of said, we're kind of doing our own thing. Let's just write on one site. So we started Northsidebound, and it's just been a blast.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's only been going on for a couple of years. Now you're based out of the Omaha area. I'd imagine,
Mhm.
college baseball there is,
The
that's the
Mecca.
top of the top, right? So
That's right.
you're just in that sense, you're already tuned into who in college is doing really well. How did that translate to, and I guess, did you grow up going to the College World Series? Did that translate really easily to, I already know some of these great players. It's easy for me to write about them because I'm around this all the time, the players before they're even getting drafted.
I wish. I grew up outside of Chicago,
Oh, okay.
Naperville. So I'll say
Hey, Naper
Chicagoland. That's
thrill.
Naper thrill.
Yeah.
That's right. And so I grew up outside Naperville. That's lifelong Cub fan. Uh, when this whole website started, actually, my wife and I, and then our kids were out in Oregon.
Mm.
So we were out there by Oregon State, watched some games there. Went to University of Oregon, watched some games there. The Eugene Emeralds were actually the Cubs affiliate for a bit, so that was very fun and obviously something I followed. Position to open up in Omaha. This was something that was closer to family. We're just so thrilled. And then this has been my first year going to the College World Series. So I've been
Oh, wow.
following these drafts really, tightly for a few years, but to actually be able to see, first round picks. I mean, I saw the Cubs first round pick, Matt Shaw,
Hmm.
hit a double into right field. I saw him make one of the most amazing catches and athletic plays at shortstop I've ever seen. And so to be able to see that, and then a couple, months later he's drafted, it's just a really really cool experience. So yeah, Omaha's just a great spot. Kids love it. Good baseball. Great spot to
Yeah.
be.
I only got to go there one time when I was younger. We had like a baseball tournament
Baseball
out there, but it
tournament.
was the
Yeah.
year
Mm,
that Mark Pryor was pitching for USC, and we got to go to that game. And I was like, man, this guy is awesome. And then the Cubs
yes,
got him, and that was like the best. So I was a huge Mark Pryor guy.
absolutely.
Unfortunately, he didn't stick around in the MLB long enough, I
Mm,
don't think, but he was great
yeah,
for
he's
sure.
that's legendary. That is like my childhood too, is remembering Mark Pryor. And oh man, it kills me a little inside, but I don't know, maybe he'll come back to Wrigley as a manager someday.
Pitching coach manager. Yeah. Why
Yeah.
not? I'm curious too about the process of like being in person and seeing players play and
Yep.
maybe forming an opinion of them in person
Mhm.
versus seeing tape, seeing them online. Maybe which one do you prefer, or which one do you think most scouts these days prefer? Because I feel almost like it's better to be, dejected and not there and have connections form or feelings formed in person, and you can just be more objective on film.
I think there's different ways you could spin it, and it kind of depends on the type of scouting that you're really looking at. So I do both. And because I mean, I'm not obviously flying out to like California to watch these players and stuff like that. I think
Mhm.
we would look at the family budget all of a sudden, be very confused where those funds are going. But it's something where there is value in doing both. And so there's value in seeing somebody in person and seeing the intangible, seeing how somebody walks on and off the field. I know this stuff doesn't feel like the most important thing, and
Right.
it's not, right? You want to see them actually play, but especially when you're looking at like high school players, these things matter. Like, who's the first out of the dugout to like high five people? Who is the player that is acting like he's the best player on the field, whether he is or isn't? There's just a ton of intangibles, how they talk to umpires, like especially from the high school side. I think there's a ton of value in person. And from the college side, these guys are scouted so intensely. So I think comparing like how I viewed stuff from the height for the College World Series and then just watching some of the games on the screen is you are looking at different things. From a pitching standpoint, I kind of like to do a little bit of both. So I like to see how the batter is reacting kind of behind home plate. So I watched Rocky's first round pick, Chase Dollander, and it was really interesting because he has got electric stuff, but you could tell that a few of the batters from Stanford were like totally they had a good game plan, they were on it, they were spitting on that slider. And then going back and watching the video of it, some of it confirmed, but then some other stuff kind of jived a little, like zigged a little bit. And so it's just kind of fun to see guys in a bunch of different ways and then kind of form a broad opinion.
Got it.
Yep.
You also do the Cubs on deck pod, right? With Brian Smith. He's been on the podcast too. He's awesome. You guys do some player interviews. Do you have any favorite player interview stories or somebody that comes on quite often that you've gotten to know pretty well?
Yeah, so Greg Huss is the third guy on that. He's actually like the main guy, and then Brian and I kind of alternate. And so I want to give a huge shout out to Greg Huss, the other Greg in Northsidebound, and
We'll get him on the show.
Cubs on
Greg
deck.
Huss.
Yeah, we'll get you on the show.
You
Greg.
should. He is a riot. No, he would be a fantastic guest. And but Brian, Greg, and I will dive in on stuff. I will say that one thing that was kind of cool was Jordan Wicks he's a left-hand pitcher. He's now pitching for the major league team. But he first round pick in 2021 for the Cubs, steadily moving up through the system, really solid selection there. He's got kind of a wide repertoire full of pitches. And so one of the things that he was actually on, I think he was on with Brian and Greg this past winter, was talking all about the background about how he developed his cutter. And it's not something that anybody else is really talking about, but he had shared that he was throwing a cutter. And so he learned it from Cliff Lee, like the major league pitcher. And man, did he have a burner of a cutter. So like it's just really cool. Now that hasn't turned into a plus pitch or anything, but I really like the idea behind that with his repertoire. And so it's just really cool that some of these players will come on, tell you intricate details about their repertoire, what they're doing, their performance plan, and like no one else has it. They're very generous with their time and jumping on. I think it was like a Monday night at like 7 p.m. that they're jumping on to have a call. And just want to give a huge shout out to the players on that because they are they do not have to do these things. They are very generous with their time, but they're awesome. Tons of fun.
Yeah, it's cool. Awesome. Just like the background stories and like the unknown relationships that players always seem to have with former players. I feel like baseball is one of those sports where the old players kind of tend to pass down the knowledge or the secrets of the trade like that. I kind of feel like Lester did that with Justin Steele. That gets talked about a lot. Focusing still on like the prospects in this farm system that we have. I know we've turned it around in recent years, and now we got one of the better ones that is stacked and deep. Who's the prospect that I mean, most Cubs fans know, PCA Wicks is up as well. These ones that have already been up, but who's somebody that we should maybe not quite know about that we should get excited for? Not necessarily this year, but the future in a Cubs uniform.
Totally. I'll do like a couple like really rapid fire ones.
Yeah.
If you're the type of fan that is like, hey, I just want to know who's going to be up next year that I should care about. There's probably two really quick. The first one is Matt Shaw. I mentioned he's the Cubs' first round pick this year. He's gone from playing in Maryland
super fast
first round pick to all of a sudden he's hitting in the AA playoffs. And that should say a lot. And there are really good analysts that I trust nationwide that are thinking he legitimately could even be on the opening day roster. I think that might be a bit of a stretch, but I trust their opinions and I think they at least make a case. So he's a guy, totally pay attention to him. Another one to pay attention to is Owen Casey, 20 years old in AA, massive power, tons of fun. He's garnered the nickname Owen Casey, ONKC. I think Greg Huss actually coined that term. And we love it. He's Canadian, got him in the Yu Darvish deal, which I know some people don't love, but Owen Casey was a great get there. He's also a guy that looks like 2024. And then you know what? I'll toss out another name that I think some people are talking about it, but not enough people are talking about him.
Sure.
And that's Moises Ballesteros. And he is a catcher / first baseman that has forced his way all the way up to AA. Very young guy. He's he's a thick build. I mean, he is a big dude. And so there are some questions about will he stick a catcher? I'd at least give him a chance. But my goodness, the bat is legit. It is one of the best contact bats. He makes amazing contact. He can hit the ball with some juice. Not enough people are talking about him. And frankly, if he's a top 50, 60 prospect next year, wouldn't surprise me.
Nice.
Mhm.
So I noticed none of the names that you mentioned were Ed Howard or Brennan Davis. I feel like those were two of our most hyped prospects. If you would have looked at this, or we would have been talking to you maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago,
Yep.
those would have been the guys we would, be talking about, I think, the most.
Yeah.
Now the system's gotten a lot better, and I'm not to say that these guys aren't any good, but what's going on with those two guys? Ed Howard was a former first round pick. Everybody loved Jackie
Yeah.
Robinson team, everybody in Chicago was all about him. So we're just wondering where he's at. And then Brennan, who was, our former top prospect.
Injured.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's he looking like?
Both injuries. I don't know too many specifics. I think but they both battled injuries.
Got
The
it.
Ed Howard one's really, really disappointing because he was starting to round into form a little bit and had a freak, horrible, horrific hip injury. If you've seen the clip, he ran to first base, landed very roughly. I don't know how gruesome you want to get, but there was definitely some like pelvis
Ugh.
bone. Yeah, it was
Okay.
a really bad situation. He was out for about a year or more, just because of how gruesome the injury is. Coming back from that's just really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Amazing kid. I still think that there's some chance that he's a major league player. He's still got some athleticism, amazingly, after all that. Just going to be so difficult, and it was already a steep learning curve. He was a tricky pick out of 2020. That draft is so crazy because you see players that look amazing that are drafted later. You see players that Asa Lacy was the 5th overall pick for the Royals. I mean, I'm not here to knock Asa Lacy. That was a disaster of a pick. That class was crazy, unfortunately, because of the lack of playing time. And then Brennan, he's back, he's playing. The injuries are still there. He's kind of battling through it. You're just hoping that 2023 is a mulligan, and then he comes back in 2024. Amazing guy, but yeah, he's fallen down the boards. You just hope that he can kind of round into form and realize some of his potential.
Yeah, definitely names that Cubs fans know and have
Yeah.
talked about. So we just keep an eye on them, right? We're always curious, what happened to that
Yeah.
prospect? But I know Evan and I talk, we talk with our friends as well, just how pumped we are of the Cubs having a competent minor league system, and also first time ever developing arms in the farm system that come up and actually, pan out and are transitioning well to the major league game. And that's got to do a little bit with the pitch lab and things that they have created down there in the minor leagues. And I don't know if you have any other insight of what the Cubs kind of have done to, almost ensure this process is more bulletproof than it's been in the past with having these prospects come up and having early success.
Yeah, I think it's a couple ways to do it. And part of the way is the fact that, and there's been articles written about this. In the past, the scouting team and the player development team weren't really on the same page as well. I'm not saying they're 100% on the same page all the time, but they weren't really on the same page well as far as who we were bringing into the organization, who are we how are we going to develop them, and so I think that already bridging the gap a little bit there is going to help, right? If you've got the type of players that player development is yes, this is what we do well with. In particular, a lot of the pitchers, not all of them, but a lot of the pitchers throw with a wrist orientation called supination. So you can throw pronated or supinated. And it's just kind of a natural movement. Some people can do both. There are a few pitchers that can really, really do both, but it's pretty difficult. Yeah, pronation, supination, and so, but the ones that happen to supinate a little bit more naturally throw fastballs that aren't as efficient. That doesn't mean they're bad. They're just a different type of spin. And so when they're less efficient, they have different movement, but it also means you're a little bit more likely to throw other pitches, for instance, a sweeper slider, which the Cubs have incorporated for a lot of people. Now, those non-efficient fastballs are ones that some player development organizations would look at and say, you know what, honestly, we don't really like that fastball. We're not going to appreciate that player as much as somebody else will. And so they kind of pass on them. And so they're kind of a little bit of a market inefficiency for a short period of time. I think the Cubs seized out on that and seized the day on that. Brought those guys in, taught them a sweeper. I've seen that done really well. Now they are working in that pitch lab and everything else with all types of orientations, with wrist orientations. They do very well with the pronation as well. But I think they just saw that, you know what, there's some value here. Let's jump on this. Let's get that. And let's teach them things that we know really well. Casey Jacobson is their minor league pitching coordinator. He is extremely well respected. He does an amazing work building out these individual development plans for these pitchers. I've heard great things from a lot of people about him. And so, you know, he and this giant team led by Craig Breslow, who's the director of pitching, they do pretty good work. I wouldn't say they're the Dodgers Rays or anything, but I honestly, they're in the mix, like right around there. They do really good job. Javier Assad is pitching in the major leagues.
Yep.
A couple of years ago. There's no way. Like, there's no way he'd be doing what he's doing. He wouldn't be throwing 96-mile-per-hour sinkers, you know, in the seventh inning. So I think they deserve a lot of credit. It's not done yet. You got to keep laying in these guys, and you got to keep developing constantly. But so far, pretty solid job.
Yeah, man, you mentioned the Dodgers. That's, to me, they're like
bar,
king of the crop.
the bar.
Every
Yeah.
pitcher
Dodgers
they bring
Rays
up.
just
Yeah, the Rays are fantastic at that as well.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of transition to major league team a little bit here. You know, it's mid-September. We got a playoff push. This is fantastic. It's not what we expected at the beginning of the year. The AAA season ends on the 24th, so we got a few days here. You got Cade Horton, who is a finalist for the minor league pitching prospect of the year. You got some guys down in the system, some names that you've mentioned. Is there anybody that we can expect to be called up for this final playoff push here?
You know, it's a really interesting question because I don't think Cade Horton's coming up. I guess it's not like impossible. He just went, I don't know if you're time stamping this, but tonight he pitched for the AA club. He went 5 innings, 7 Ks. I think he gave up like 2 hits, 1 walk, no runs. He's looking like a stud. I don't think he comes up, but I guess it's not like impossible. I haven't heard anything inside the organization about that. I think that would be like a really big swing there, but I guess it's possible. As far as anybody else, man, we're so close to the end of this season. It's really hard to imagine that there's somebody. It's possible Matt Mervis comes up. He got a little bit of a run in Chicago for a bit.
Yep.
He's been swinging a good bat. It wouldn't be the worst idea to maybe bring him up, even just for some lefty power, hit some fastball. So that's possible. That might be it. I guess I don't think Matt Shaw is coming up. That one would really surprise me.
The tail of Matt Shaw, that would be like the tall tail if he came up, you know, so fast and then also produced.
Right.
I feel like he would join the talks of, like, I mean, every Cubs fan's still a Schwarber fan. Like, that guy kind of rose so fast and just came up and always hit. That would be awesome.
I think with how the Cubs are so protective of their 40-man slots, that unless they were really confident somebody was like, this is it, we're going all in, this is happening, I think I'd be pretty surprised if they were up. But, you know, sometimes the desire to get to the playoffs, you push all your chips in.
Yeah. So like Evan was alluding to, you know, we're making the push, albeit I think we're almost stumbling and falling to that finish line as of late. 2-8 in the last 10. One of our favorite prospects, we've been talking all year about him, PCA, has been brought up. He's making some great plays in the outfield. I think that was expected. But I also think we thought the bat might have transitioned quicker than it has. I think he's 0-8. He's hitless, 0 for 8 so far at the plate. Anything on him, you know, not hitting at the major league level? Is the book out on him, or is he pressing too hard? Anything that, you know, have you seen it before?
Yeah, I'll be honest. So I didn't think he'd go 0 for 8 with like 4 Ks or whatever, but I wasn't really anticipating him hitting much in the first couple weeks. That's kind of been his MO. When he gets to a new level, he just kind of, it takes a little bit of time to adjust. and it's not long. It's usually just like a few games of, consistent playing time. He's a really stubborn guy, and I say that with a lot of like nicety to that. Is that he takes that criticism, he sees it, he just pushes through it, he adapts, he makes the changes that he needs. And so, I don't know if he's necessarily pressing. Honestly, I'm just so happy he's up because I think that this is the opening day center fielder next year. And to get, or at least putting himself in a really good spot, and to get some of those jitters out now makes it much more likely that he comes into spring training very confident, can hopefully make those adjustments, win the spot on opening day. I would really like to see him get that first hit. I think
Yeah.
stop bunting, just get the hit, just please swing. Like the bunt situation is
Just get it over
frustrating
with,
for
right?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think put some swings on it because I think he would benefit from getting that first hit. I think it would take a little bit of weight off his shoulders.
Definitely.
Yep.
So, I mean, a lot of fans, I would say, are surprised, happy that we're here as the season's progressed, and especially after that last push that they've made towards the playoffs, and now they're stumbling. I think everybody kind of expects us to be in the playoffs, so everybody's mindset might have shifted mid-season there. But there's a few one-year deals that were signed. You got Stroman's going to be probably gone. Bellinger, hopefully they find a way to bring him back, but they might not. He might be gone. So I think a lot of fans are thinking, this was a short window. It was this 1 year. We were going to make a quick run. These guys are going to be gone. But I'm hearing a lot of good things about the prospects from you. Should
Yeah.
fans be just as excited for next season as they are for this playoff run this year, this team?
I mean, I think so. I mean, if anything, I think there's a pretty decent chance Stroman opts in because it just kind of he's really on the border. He's going to need to look really good in the next about week or two to make teams, or if he somehow builds up enough to do like a playoff start and obviously they make it, that might be different. But pretty good chance that he's just going to use the 1 year, $21 million opt in and feel like, you know what, I'll just do that as a pillow contract and take that guaranteed money rather than getting out on the open market. Bellinger, obviously, they do hopefully they sign. You know, the majority of the players that have really gotten them here, Stans, Bellinger, are here for next year. Right? Like Nico and Dansby are playing incredible defense up the middle. Knock on wood. I mean, there shouldn't be any changes with that. Miguel Amaya hasn't gotten a ton of playing time, but when he is, he's looked really good. He and Yan Gomes are probably your catchers next year. PCA has already made his debut. Obviously, you want more impact there. Seiya Suzuki has had a renaissance after a few days of just kind of sitting and resting and, taking in the game from a different way. He's produced like crazy. He's here for the next few years. So is Ian Happ. And while Ian Happ has gotten a lot of flack, Ian Happ's had a back-to-back 3.5 win seasons. And honestly, that's pretty valuable. So, like, yeah, it's not super flashy, and maybe some people are annoyed he's hitting in the 3 spot, but he's been good again. So, like, and Justin Steele, God, we went all the way through that, and like Justin Steele's a Cy Young candidate. It may be a lot to expect him to do this season again next year because that's a lot to do back to back. But man, he's been great. So I don't think they're a flash in the pan, and you've got like a bunch of prospects. If anything, this feels like the start of a run. Now, I'm not saying it's like the 2015 season, with Bryant and Schwarber and
everyone getting
Russell
called up,
and Soler. I mean, they had like 4 top 20 prospects. The Cubs don't have that right now, but they definitely feel like, yeah, you know what, the guys that they're committing to long term are coming up, and I appreciate the prospects. Some won't make it. Some are going to get traded. And the Cubs actually, I think they're going to make a deal this winter where they buy and they send out a couple of those prospects that are like, whoa, but look at who we brought in. I don't know who that's going to be yet. I've got some ideas, but yeah, I mean, I think they're going to make some aggressive moves this offseason.
Favorite name out of your ideas there. I'd love to hear this because this is fantastic to hear this from a Cubs fan perspective that you think we're going to be buyers in the off season.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
With prospect trade,
vibes
that would
are
be
high.
awesome.
So I'll toss out a couple like just younger starter names, because I think they do kind of a compilation. Um, I'm asking around to see like how likely teams think that they. I'm not asking the teams. I'm asking people who follow the teams, obviously. But like how if they think that some of these guys make it moved. I've heard conflicting stuff on it, but Jesus Luzardo, out of
Yeah.
Miami, he's got a few years of control, big fastball, looks really good. He's going to start getting expensive for Miami. I'm not saying they're giving him away. You're going to have to buy in there a little bit, but that might be a fun challenge trade. Tarek Skubal out of Detroit. I think he's a future frontline guy. So I don't know if they end up moving him, but if they do, I think the Cubs should buy. And then a little bit lower of a tier, but I think the Cubs would do well with this type of pitcher is Brady Singer out of Kansas City. It's not super flashy. I don't think he's an ace, but I think that the price could be reasonable for a Royals team that probably should think about focusing more on like 2026, 2027, when Bobby Witt's going to be really kind of exploding. He already is. And a little bit less about 2024. So that's probably a guy that if I was running the Royals, I would shop around is Brady Singer. But I think he'd do pretty well in the Cubs organization.
Nice.
Man.
Yeah. Let me
It's
check my notes. Let me see if I got anything else here. Yeah, I think those are the ones
Cubs
I'd look at.
fans. Cool. It feels good. Like this was a cleansing conversation for me. I know we're both Bears fans. I don't know if you are as well,
Oh,
Greg,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
the
Nasty
Chicago
this weekend.
sports fandom has been down in the dumps lately. So this was like a cleansing conversation to look at our Cubs, look at our organization, and see some optimism. I'm feeling good about it.
It's not just this year. We got a lot going on for the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Man,
Absolutely.
so thanks for being here, Greg. I really appreciate it. Again, guys, he is Greg Zumach. He is the co-founder and writer of Northsidebound.com. He's also the co-host of Cubs on Deck. Give him a follow on Twitter, or X is called now, at Ivy Futures. Greg, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, so much, guys.
All right. Thanks again to our guest, Greg Zumach. Again, he's the co-founder and writer for Northsidebound.com. Check out Cubs on Deck podcast, and then check out Greg. He's at Ivy Futures on Twitter. And I'm going to give you a quick second here to just rant about what we're seeing with the Bears. 0-2 now. They lost 27-17 to the Bucks this week. Another game that just looked just awful. I mean,
terrible.
Nothing better than the first game. It's like they didn't learn anything after that first game. What did you see?
Misery, just depression on in the form of a football game. Team sucks. Coaching is, I'm out. Like this
out on the coaches.
The whole thing is just broken. It's hard to watch because the players don't look like they trust in what they're told to be doing. The coaches are being very secretive in like their responses. Like our defensive coordinator just didn't show up, personal reasons, and then when like asked why he wasn't there, they just like aren't saying anything. I think they're asking the players like what happened. The players don't even know. Like it's not good. It's not a good look. There's no like unity. There's no team that looks like they're playing for each other, that they want to win. Everyone kind of just like, I mean, looks like they're out on their own trying to like secure good tape for themselves because they already know that this season's going to be a punt and they just want it like an individual highlight here and there. The offensive line isn't doing as bad as I think people think it's doing because of all the sacks, and it's because Justin Fields is holding onto the ball. I think we ruined him. I think they're trying to fit, a circle peg into a square hole because he is a rushing quarterback, and they want to make him a passing quarterback. And I think he bought into that like discussion in the offseason of, yeah, I could be a passing quarterback and a pocket passing quarterback. I want to do it for the next 15 years. So he bought into it, even though like that's not the player that he is. So he's like lying to himself. The Bears are lying to themselves. This team sucks. It's 0-2. I'm actually looking forward to the draft, man. We're going to have 2 top 5 picks. But we should fire the front office as well. We should fire the coaches and just start over, because that's pretty much what Poles did. Is he gutted this team, gutted the roster, signed a bunch of bullshit. Everyone's still terrible. But we have a ton of cap room and we're going to get more picks. So just start over again. Have the balls to just start over again instead of just like being softies and allowing people that are incompetent in their job to continue to be incompetent.
Man, I don't think there's anything I can say to follow that up. You hit the nail on the head for sure. I mean, you got
all sucks.
Tampa Bay in the locker room. I think they asked, was Levante David, what happened on that play? Like, how did you know that you were going to pick off that screen pass and just return it? What were they on, like the 5-yard line?
Yeah.
And he's like, they tried running that same play 3 times in a row. They were still lined up the exact same way. Everybody knew what they were. He was like, looked like frustrated that he was even asked that question. He's like, what do you mean? You guys all didn't see this, that they were running the exact same play 3 times
Yeah.
and then we just picked it off like it was like a practice? I mean, they don't know what they're doing. You got the all 22 out, which everybody, it seems like I've never seen Bears fans go in this in depth on like what is happening, that everyone's watching the all
Because we're
22
trying to
now and
solve the
posting
problem.
the clips. I've never seen this before. And this is the year that everyone's like, okay, this team's awful. I'm going to figure this out. You know, nobody's doing their job. Nobody knows what's happening here. I'm actually going to watch the tape and I'm going to figure this out and post it on Twitter and tell you Justin Fields didn't see this read. Guy's wide open. He didn't throw it. It's not the line's fault that he got sacked. He's getting all kinds of time back there and he's not making it happen. But there are none of those designed runs. And that's what he does so well. And if you look at like Indianapolis, they hire Shane Steichen, who famously made Jalen Hurts awesome in the way he is and kind of figured that whole thing out. And then he goes to Indy and they're like, we're going to get Anthony Richardson. We're going to get this guy that knows what he's doing. And Anthony Richardson's been a stud for the first 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And it's like, why, you know, you have an Anthony Richardson in Justin Fields, a guy with a great arm too. I mean, he could be Anthony Richardson. They could be doing the same thing side by side, but we don't have a guy like Shane Steichen that's in here that knows what he's doing. So yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I'm out on these coaches, completely out on the coaches. I'd give Foles another shot because I do like a couple of the moves that he's made, you know, to get DJ Moore. I'll give him a lot of credit for that, but I don't know. There's not a lot going on that defense, and we have a defensive head coach, right? Eberflus was supposed to overhaul this defense. It looks
Yeah.
awful. It's the worst I've seen it in a long time. I don't feel like there's any defensive playmaker. I was asking the question, you know, who is the defensive captain here? I feel like they don't have that guy who's like
What's
in
the
the huddle
identity?
saying,
Yeah.
like, you know, there's no Derwin James, there's no Micah Parsons. We don't have anybody that's like in that huddle saying, all right, guys, we need this, make this happen. So there's nobody there. It's just team's frustrating. Yeah, it's hard to watch.
It all sucks,
Hard to
man.
watch.
It all
Yeah, it all
sucks.
sucks. But let's go to a couple top performances this week, fantasy football.
Let's do it.
Puka Nacua. What about this guy?
Your guy.
This is the guy. I
Puka
mentioned him
Puka.
last week as a good pickup. I spent a bunch of fab money on this guy, grabbed him in a few leagues. He looks awesome. I'm super excited to see where he continues to go, especially when Cooper Kupp comes back. We'll see what happens there. Cam Akers was ruled out right before the beginning of that game, though. So that's a dud of the week. I feel like a lot of people had him in their lineup, even probably got zeros.
Mhm.
And then there was some big injuries. Nick Chubb got hurt. He's out for the year. Just, I don't know if you saw the clip.
Gruesome.
If you didn't, don't look it up because it's terrible.
Yeah.
And then Saquon's out for a couple weeks. It sounds like some concussions. Our boy Richardson, we were just talking about Jalen Waddle, Devontae Adams. So a couple tough injuries this week. But let's get into a few waiver pickups for all of the fantasy football fans out there. I mentioned Nick Chubb just now. Jerome Ford has to be the number one pickup. I think anywhere, you know, you got a guy who played awesome, filled right in for Chubb after he left, and is probably going to be their starter the rest of the year. So that's a huge pickup if you can get him. Roshan Johnson on our Bears getting a lot of run.
Rojo.
Foreman was inactive going into the game, even so it just shows what kind of confidence they have in Johnson. But the coaches are still in confidence, like we just talked about. So we'll see what happens with that. But Roshan is looking good. Latavius Murray and Damian Harris for Buffalo. A couple guys that could fall into the end zone too. They're taking some goal line carries from James Cook there. So a couple other names there to mention if you're looking for running back. Matt Breida, obviously Barkley's
I feel
backup.
like the two free agents you might want to take a stab at too. I know Kareem Hunt. Everyone's like, well, Cleveland, he's got that tie, might go there. And then Leonard Fournette, Indy looking for a running back as well. So I'd keep an eye on those guys.
Yeah, and Zach Moss for Indy played pretty well this week. I mean, he's a good grab, but we've seen him before. I don't think he's anything too special. Right. Wide receivers, if you know, Tutu Atwell's out there, he's been having a great couple weeks, looking good. It looks like McVay's figured out a way to scheme him open consistently. Deeper leagues, Marvin Mims played very, very little, and he scored a lot of fantasy points.
A lot of deep balls.
Yeah, somebody that you want to keep an eye on for sure. So good bench stash. You need a tight end. He's probably not owned. Zach Ertz has looked really good the first 2 weeks. Arizona doesn't have much going on, so they've been throwing a lot to him. So those are some good pickups. If you need a quarterback, Matt Stafford has looked awesome.
I
through
needed
2 weeks.
0.06 points this week. So that's what I needed. I lost by 0.06. That's what I needed, Evan. Where could I have found that, huh?
On a defensive, there was a defensive tackle right at the end of the game, wasn't it?
I wasn't watching the game, but I knew I was
Yeah.
going. We have IDP in our league, and it was a safety. Thought I had it, and then all of a sudden, like the game started going back and forth. Maybe some turnovers. I don't know. It was the Patriots Dolphins, and then I lost. Yep.
Yeah. Hunter Henry caught a pass. He turned around, threw it to offensive lineman. Offensive lineman caught it, and the guy that you were playing against, his safety tackled
That was that
him
play.
to
Okay,
end
cool.
the game. Yeah,
That feels great. Love that.
that's a heartbreaker, man, for sure. But let's get into your week 3 picks, Dan. Run it through. Thursday night game, you got the Giants at the 49ers.
49ers.
All right, Sunday, Colts at Ravens.
Ravens.
Titans at Browns.
Titans.
Okay. Atlanta at Detroit.
Atlanta, man. They're going crazy. 2-0. They're 2-0. Big Atlanta guy. I think I've always been an Atlanta guy, right? Wasn't I? No, I was the Arizona Cardinals last year. Okay.
Yeah. Saints at Packers.
Green Bay.
Texans at Jaguars.
Jags.
Broncos at Dolphins.
Dolphins.
Chargers at Vikings.
Minnesota.
Patriots at the Jets.
Patriots.
Bills at the Commanders.
Commanders. 3-0.
Panthers at Seahawks.
Seattle.
Cowboys at Cardinals.
Dude, that Cowboys defense looks insane. Cowboys.
Bears at the Chiefs.
Chiefs
Bears this week.
No.
Sure.
I used to do it last year. Bears every week. No, I'm done.
Done with it. He's just done with this coaching staff. Steelers at Raiders.
It's so frustrating. Steelers.
Then Monday night we got another doubleheader. Eagles at Bucks.
Let's do Bucks.
Okay, they're hot. They're 2-0 to start. And then Rams at Bengals.
Dude, is Burrow going to play?
He might sit. I don't know. It sounds like
I think Cincinnati's got to win primetime game, and they're kind of, feeling the heat a little bit. Bengals.
Yeah.
There it is.
There it is. All right. Talked about my boy Puka. It's fast fact of the week. I got a couple of them.
All right.
Most receptions in a single game by a rookie. He had 15. He's also has the most receptions by a rookie in the first 2 career games, 25.
And he's going to sustain that. He's going to sustain
first player
that
ever with 10 catches, 100 yards in their first 2 career games. First player ever for that. I mean, this guy's a stud. He's
can't wait to get the trade proposal for you. Trying to trade him off after 2 good weeks.
This guy cannot let me down the rest of the season.
Offering Puka for Christian McCaffrey.
All right, that's been our show. Thanks again to our guest, Greg Zumach, for joining us today. For Dan Sluck, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening.
Cheers.